Welcome to Ashley On, your one-stop podcast where we talk about health and wellness, spirituality, and all things new. Stick around as we delve deep into innovations to support a better world.
Hey guys, as always, this episode is brought to you by Packed with Life Tea. You know, I always talk about how much I love iced tea, and Packed with Life tastes fantastic. And I don't add any sweetener or anything like that. Just great tasting iced tea, packed with organic adaptogens, including the 4 key mushrooms: lion's mane, chaga, cordyceps, and reishi. Of course, it tastes great as hot tea as well, if that's your thing. And some people like to add a little bit of honey. But either way, no matter how you like your tea, you're going to love this tea, and it will boost your immune system, brain, lungs, and gut. That's why it's Packed with Life. So get yours today at packedwithlife.com. Have a great day.
Today, my son Jackson joins me to catch up again with author of The Origin Speaks, Guy Needler. Guy is an old friend of the show. He's been on a few times, and we catch up and talk about the ascension that is happening now at the universe and what that's all about, as well as touch on Guy's upcoming new book. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hello, Guy. Good to see you again.
Hello to you as well. It's good to see you and good to be seen. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to talk to you as always, and I appreciate you being so willing to just jump on and do another session with us. You said last time we talked, if the feeling was right, to reach out to you. So I guess you can take this as a sign that the feeling is right.
Well, thank you.
So, lots of changes in our world that are going on, right? There's a lot of things I'd love to talk to you about. One of the things that I kind of wanted to start with was the concept that a lot of us are looking for, what can we do? What is our role? What can we do to help the world, right? And many people are thinking that way anyway. And, recently I wrote a children's book called Fast Waves. It's available on Kindle. And the concept was, by being kind and having positive and high vibrations, you're impacting the world in a positive way. And so I just, wondered if we could start by just talking about this concept of doing something for the world by meditating or praying for a better world. Is that enough, so to speak?
Well, praying as such isn't as accurate or as useful as focused meditation. I mean, praying it's sort of broadband rather than focused.
Mm-hmm.
Although, collectively people do like to pray in churches and mosques and temples and in their own home, for example. And having a positive thought process surrounding those prayers or those mantras or whatever you want to call them, focused meditation, is always useful. It does present a higher level of frequency around the individual, and therefore it affects the environment that they're in and the individuals who they interact with. So it is useful. Although a focused meditation upon a certain subject, for instance, projecting energy or creating a sort of world that you want to be in by seeing it, feeling it, being it, and interacting with it in a way that is consistent with that desire is very, very powerful. So in the same way as you would meditate or see yourself being in abundance every day, if you want to be in abundance, and you see that abundance, you feel that abundance, you're in that level of abundance, and you ignore where you currently are, then that level of abundance comes. But if you do the same thing with the environment and the world and the individuals who are interacting with and creating the circumstances within that environment, then we can affect them as well. So it's really important to be positive and to creating the children's books where you're giving a level of programming to those who are ready to be programmed, level of sort of absorption of a thinking of a way of being. That's really, really positive. What I would say to people is, if they want to create a new environment, if it's a better environment, then we need to be, remove our selfishness, remove our materialism, remove our desire to ignore people's needs, remove the desire to not pick up the piece of trash on the floor and put it into the nearest trash can, and basically just be the good example. And usually when we're out, if we see any trash on the floor, we pick it up and put it into the nearest trash can. We've never understood why people can't do that themselves. Or even when you go into the countryside, you see these big piles of builders' rubbish. You think, well, why is that there? Because if they had to come out to the countryside to dump the stuff, then why couldn't they have just gone down the road to the tip and do it and recycle it properly? It's just low frequency thoughts. So if we can be better individuals by illustrating through our own actions how we should think, behave, and act as an advanced civilization, and that also includes how we interact with the environment and how we treat the environment, how we treat others around us, then that eventually gets absorbed by those around us who don't think and behave and act in that way, because they're affected by something called triangulation, where high frequencies are absorbed by people, but it's difficult for them to absorb it. But it's very easy for them to get down frequency. That's why it's easier for people to do things wrong and be angry and nasty and be vicious than it is to be kind. It's much more easy to be low frequency than high frequency. So be the example, be the good example, and don't worry about how you're affecting it or how one is affecting it, because if we start to worry about how much of an impact we're having, we start to get despondent. Just think of it as being, it's making an impact and it's continuing to make an impact, and that's the best thing to do. Just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I give you a lot of credit for inspiring, the book, because one of the things it was just something that was inside. It's a very simple concept, but I thought, a lot of people have difficulty grasping this concept of how being kind works to make a better world. And, so I really the intention was to put that out there for folks rather than to trying to make money or anything. It was really just to try to create the wave of positivity and to put it out into the environment and to make an impact that way. And it's really been, it's been fun because there was no expectations behind that.
And you'll find that if you have no expectations of anything else other than to be of service, and you don't expect to get any praise back or any recognition back, then we don't get despondent, anxious, or disappointed at all. We just keep doing it. And the number of, for example, the number of authors that end up being rich and famous authors is very small. It's only it's only a few that have had this as part of their life plan to achieve this. The rest of us basically just contribute in the best way we can do. And that's fine. That's great.
You mentioned something a few minutes ago about meditating with a feel for abundance, right? And I've talked to a lot of people about this, and I find there's a lot of folks that really struggle with understanding what that feels like. What does abundance feel like, right? And unfortunately today there's many people that are really having a hard time getting to that feeling. What advice would you give? Because I admit I don't know that I understand exactly what a complete abundance feels like, and I want to get there, right? So what would you share there to help?
Well, people consider abundance to be material abundance. That's the biggest mistake straight away. Abundance is recognizing that you have enough. You have the right people around you. You have the right environment around you. You have the right living conditions around you, the right friends, the right opportunities to interact and make a difference, and the right opportunity to receive enough remuneration to support your living costs. And we have to recognize that we do have to earn money to be able to live. And
right.
Gone are the days where we could be a yogi in a loincloth, sitting around a banyan tree and being provided for. That's not even possible in India.
Right.
Very often these days it's very, very difficult. So being in abundance is all about feeling that you've got it, or what you're going to get is going to be it, and it does come. I mean, I can turn an abundance on and off. People would go, "What are you talking about? It's nonsense." But I can. You know, if for instance I have a list of people who have got an appointment for a reading or a healing, and I think I've got too many people, I can just think, well, I don't need this many people. Perhaps they don't need healing. Perhaps they don't need the reading. And then sometimes I get a cancellation, and sometimes I don't get any new clients for a long time, until my thought process is, well, okay, I can cope with more now. And then woof, they all come, and they start to make appointments at a ridiculously large rate. So it's about sort of knowing where you are, being comfortable with yourself, being comfortable with your circumstance, being comfortable with your ability to survive and interact, and just be content with it. But the feeling of abundance is that in its entirety. However, it's creating that condition which counts, and that comes from within, really. It's the feeling of total abundance, of having all you need and not needing anything else, it's amazing. It's, I mean, the one thing with materialism is that once you've got something, you want more. If you have what you need to do your job, then that's fine. If you have to get new things to help you do it, like computers and things, then fine. But what do you do with the old stuff? When I donate it to schools, so it's sometimes we need to have new stuff to help us to continue to do our work. Sometimes we don't. I mean, for example, some people go and buy a new set of golf clubs every year because there's a new model out with a different brand, or push bike or a new car. And I don't do that. I have a certain level of quality of thing for bicycles, for instance, and I've stayed at that level. That's it. I'm happy with it. And it's just knowing that what you interact with and how you interact with it and what you need to survive and do what you're doing is enough, and just accepting it and being content with it. But also being able to have, if you have any more, I mean, we were just doing a quick calculation a couple of days ago. We were working out how much of the charitable giving we give. It's significant. And you think, oh, all of those, small amounts of money per week or per month that go on a regular basis, it all adds up. And so the objective is, if you do have more than you need, then give it to those who need it. So that way you're supporting them as well, which is wonderful. So that's being in abundance, really. It's about being happy and joyful with who you are, what you are, where you are, who you're interacting with, how you're spending your time, the things that you need to be able to do your work. And if you have extra, give it to those who really do need it.
Yeah. Jackson, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Guy, listening to the on and off switch about abundance, I feel that feels like something that it's as a choice. You can choose to relax the wants that you may have and be content with where you are. But I am curious about these abundant things you're talking about giving money or picking up trash. What about spiritual abundance? What about knowing that your state of being satisfied with your present state of being? Because right now, there's a lot of things that I notice, a lot of people going through very hard lessons and very hard awakenings, especially being down here at the University of Colorado. I see a lot of things that I didn't for a long time going to a small school. What about spiritual abundance?
Well, some of those things about being content is part of spirituality. It's being here and accepting where you are. And I mean, some people who aren't in abundance can be in total abundance but not realize it. It's, for instance, people want to have, I mean, there are people who want to have more friends around them, have more people like themselves, have more people who would be able to do the pastimes the same as them, who would give them more time who can talk to them more, who put them at the center of attention. Whereas really they're looking for a level of interaction which is unsupportable, really, because if we are not happy with our circumstance in one location, thinking we can get it in another location, it's not going to work. You're just transporting the problem from one to another. So the spiritual side of it is really understanding the self and recognizing that the way forwards is to work with what we've got and be happy with it and be content with it. Not lie down and think that's it, but to say, okay, how can I think of this as being, the best it's ever going to be, but also improve it. And that is all to do with being content with the self. Now, sometimes we can have partners who they're materialistic in another way. They're materialistic in their own in how people interact with them. They want people to be there for them all the time, and that again is a way of becoming selfish and materialistic. So it's difficult to try to work with those individuals because they see it as being, it's their right to have this and that, and these people around them to sort of justify their own thought processes, whereas maybe the thought process is wrong in the first place. So the spiritual side of that would be to accept that individual for who they are and just interact with them in your normal way when you can do. Now, in terms of spiritual progression, being abundance in spiritual progression, that's all to do with being, content with the environment, calm with everything, not responding in an angry way, but trying to understand the other person's perspective, and just realizing that they don't understand. But you can show by example. Now, in terms of connectivity, which is something else, then really it's all about meditating more, connecting more, knowing that there are certain goals we can get to, and then there's more, because there's lots of people who think that, I can read tarot cards, I've got it, I can get a connection that way. Fine, it's an interface. I can do it by psychometry. I can touch something and find out where it's come from and who's owned it. Okay, fine, that's one thing. Connectivity to the greater reality, that the universe and the multiverse beyond that, and our creator, our source, our God, is also part of it. But the way we get there is a series of steps. And some people will stop at one step and think, I've got it, because they get intoxicated with what's there. And they don't understand that there's more steps beyond that. But some people can also go beyond that and stay there and get intoxicated with it, because they feel certain things and they don't realize that there is always that which is beyond. So spiritual abundance is all about recognizing that the work on oneself is ad infinitum, and not to worry about where we are, but to recognize that we are where we are because of our work. And sometimes being connected to source, or going into samadhi or transcendental meditation, which means you transcend the body, astral traveling, is a function of hard work and correct living and correct thought processes, and having the right sort of quality of individuals around you as friends. But it takes a long time. Sometimes people can do it instantaneously, 2 or 3 weeks, they've got it. Sometimes people take 20 years, 30 years. It's all about keeping going, recognizing that the spiritual path is a never-ending path, and there's always something higher, and recognizing it. And that's being in a spiritual abundance, being thirsty for the next step. What's the next step? How much more connected can I get now? Because this is wonderful.
So how does that? So that leads into another thing that's, I'm hearing a lot about and reading a lot about. That's the topic of ascension, right? And that we're currently, our planet and our species is currently ascending. What are your thoughts on that concept? What does that mean? Tell our listeners a little bit of insight on that.
Well, it's misunderstood for a start off, because ascension is basically our ascension whilst in the physical form to a different level of frequency whilst in the physical form. Now, people need to understand and recognize that the physical body is not what we are. It's simply a motor car that we use to transport ourselves and interact with this particular environment at this particular frequency level. If we had a higher frequency vehicle, we wouldn't be seen as we are now. We'd be in a different level of frequency, which is well beyond the physical senses, the gross physical senses as we know them now. So ascension is to do with, again, working on oneself spiritually and mentally and physically, being of service, being help, recognizing one's impact on the environment, doing things correctly with a conscience, being a good example. And in doing that and meditating on a regular basis, we raise our frequencies. And when we raise our frequencies, we start to interact with, subtly at first, those things that are on the next frequency level. So ascension is an individual thing, not a group thing, although group ascensions can happen, but it usually ends up being with those who are working together rather than having this, what would you call it, this minimum level of individuals who are self-aware, creating a condition where the rest of the planet can go. So 10% of us being self-aware isn't going to let the other 90% go up to the next frequency level if the other 90% are stuck and wallowing in the mire of materialism because they're not ready for it. So it's about our own spiritual advancement and creating the condition where, whilst we're incarnating this particular body, we can start to interact with the next frequency up. That's ascending the frequencies. And we are doing it gradually, individually and collectively. We're doing it gradually. Although we have ups and downs, we have lots of little, I call it a sawtooth profile, because we have an average, a median, which is going up. But on that average, there's also little ups and downs. And I thought at first, when I experienced the information that was being given to me, referenced this, that it was a simple sawtooth profile with some teeth being up and some teeth being a bit down. But what I've recently realized is that basically it's like a big wood saw, a big pit saw that used to have in the old days. We had one person in a pit with a saw, the other person on top. So you have big teeth with little teeth on top, drop down again, and then a big tooth with little teeth on top. And that's what we're experiencing right now. We're experiencing one of these big drops before we come back up again and have these little teeth on top. And so collective ascension is something that we do individually that affects us all collectively. But unless we want to become that which is consistent with a higher level of thought process, we will always stay on a lower level of frequency. So although us doing the job we're doing the work we're doing spiritually and metaphysically is creating a higher level of frequency within ourselves, a higher level of thought process in interaction with the environment. And although we do have an effect on others around us, they also have to do their work as well. So we can help them a bit. It's a little bit like if you have a bath full of water, of normal temperature water, ambient temperature water, about 21 degrees. If you pour a cup of boiling hot water in there, it makes a little bit of a difference, but not much. So if you consider us as being, a small cup of boiling hot water making a difference to a bath full of sort of not even warm water, it doesn't make a difference, and it soon evens out as well. So there has to be more cups of boiling hot water put into the bath to start to make the overall temperature of the bath rise in temperature. And that's the same with frequency.
What's different now though? Like you hear the concepts of like, well, the age of Aquarius or whatever you want to say, right? But what's different? Couldn't we have always made that choice to work and ascend, or is there something different energetically now that allows us to make that choice to ascend?
Right now, right now, but since about 2012, we've come down a bit, and the reason for that is because that the mass ascension that was being broadcast by lots of individuals of note, lots of authors, lots of people, lots of spiritual leaders, were putting a lot of emphasis on this and making their careers out of it, but they didn't understand the process. So when they said, "Oh, on the 12th of the 12th, 2012, there's going to be this mass ascension, and we're all going to be able to see the next level up and do all these fantastic things that are associated with being a higher frequency, like telepathy and telekinesis and teleportation and all this sort of stuff," didn't happen. A lot of people use this as an excellent example of how much mumbo jumbo spiritualism is, basically.
Right.
And so a lot of these people lost faith. They lost their careers because they based it upon something which wasn't really achievable, but actually was being achieved individually, slowly, and the level of attainment that we were supposed to have achieved on this date, we'd achieved something like, I don't know, was it about 10 months previously. But because we didn't see this big jump collectively, this sort of going up a level instantaneously, people didn't recognize it. What happened? We got very slowly to that point. Mm-hmm. Because we go slowly, we get normalized. It's a little bit like I like to use this. I like to use this example of having a frog in a saucepan. Okay, you have a frog in a saucepan full of water, it'll stay there. If you put a frog in a saucepan full of boiling water, it'll hop out pretty quickly because there's a difference. If you have the frog in the saucepan full of water and slowly raise the temperature, it'll stay there because it doesn't feel the shock of the difference, and so it gradually gets cooked. Probably the job of a good sushi chef. But basically, what we're seeing is that in essence, because we move slowly, we do get normalized to things, and we don't notice this growth. Another example: in the old days, we never had jet lag. We never had jet lag because we used to go across the continents via train or horse or boat along the ocean, and we normalized.
But one thing I know, Jackson wanted to talk to you. I know we have a few more minutes left, but one of the concepts that he's studying at the University of Colorado, thinking about what majors he might explore, and some of that conversation has led to the legal conversation and the concept of law, and then through that he's discovered something called the sovereign law. And I don't know if this is something that you're aware of or have ever heard of, or Jackson, if you want to maybe describe it a little bit and get guys' reaction.
Sure. So Guy, this is a really, really neat concept. It's called the law for mankind. Mm-hmm. So the structure of this is they have this course that you take online that you go into, and it's this video course, and they explain to you how the legal societies in countries like the UK or the United States have been basically set up to diminish us from being man or woman, which is a spiritual title, to being person or employee or employer, or in a legal sense, plaintiff, defendant, prosecutor. And basically, the whole structure of the system of government is surrounded by these titles to diminish man and woman to these different things, to then tax if you are a landowner or you are a parent, right? If it's on, and this is where it gets a little bit into the gray area. I'm a little bit new into this, but the point is that we come here and we take on these different titles that then we operate under like pieces on a monopoly board that then bound us to these certain rules that we have to then play this game by or live our lives by.
There's a lot of concepts that people are broadcasting that illustrate the way in which we've lost our sovereignty, if you want to call it that, where we've lost our ability to to be individuals. That's where the sovereignty comes into it. Now, one could argue that the way that some of the laws have happened is actually beneficial, because if you think of it in terms of, we're not looking at people as being man or woman, because it's discriminatory. Black, white, Afro-Caribbean, American Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Maori, Hawaiian. You know, we're not compartmentalizing ourselves anymore. We're just saying we're a person. There's nothing wrong with that, provided it's not used as a way of control. Because at the end of the day, we are just souls in a human body, and the way the skin presents itself, the way the body form factor presents itself, is really immaterial. The reason for us being here is to interact with each other in a low frequency environment and do the best we can do to survive it and to experience, learn, and evolve. If we decide to pay too much attention to the way that certain conspiracy theories are floating around, that they use to control us and this, that, and the other, then we get embroiled in them, and then we lose our sovereignty. So my philosophy is, okay, it's out there. Does it affect me? No. So I continue to do what I do myself and carry on. Sometimes we have to go and follow the rules to be able to continue to do what we're doing. For example, when we were at the height of the COVID-19, and we haven't finished it yet, but we're not far away from it, because it's now being recognised as endemic rather than pandemic. And it always was endemic. It's just that it was a new thing that was particularly nasty to a significant percentage of the population, but not massively significant. About 5%. It's something that we have to work with. For example, getting passenger location forms, getting COVID vaccination certificates, getting tests before you fly and after you fly. And recognising that flights are going to be cancelled. I had 7 flights cancelled the year before last. Seven flights, and in last year, and even last year. So recognising that these things happen and not getting frustrated by it or not letting it take over one is the way of maintaining one's sovereignty, even though there's lots of controls in place. For instance, going to the supermarket to wear a mask. Lots of people, me and my partner as well, complained like hell, how much of an inconvenience it was. It doesn't actually help a lot, really, because a lot of these viruses are in the air, in the aerosol they call it. But if we just think, well, okay, I'm going to go shopping. Is it a real problem to put a mask on for a bit? No, let's get on with it and do what we've got to do. So once you start to realise that as the situation changes, if you want to continue to do what you're doing, you have to adapt to it. Then that's the way to maintain one's sovereignty. And eventually these things do change back to where they were, or to something else which is more acceptable. So I think it's good that these things are being brought up, but it's the individual choice as to whether to follow them or not. And my feeling is that we should use our intuition as to what is bona fide and what isn't bona fide, what is reasonable, what isn't reasonable, what has chunks of the truth in, but is then covered in other stuff. But the chunks of the truth are there to give people an anchor point. Oh, this is true, so the rest of it must be true, etc., etc. So we have to be really careful. But the most important thing is to be true to oneself, and when we are true to oneself, all these other things that fly around don't matter. We just navigate around them.
Yeah, that's great. So tell us about the new book you're working on in the closing few minutes that we have. Like, what are you working up? What's up? What are you up to?
Well, the one book is now in the editing stage. It's called The Uncreated Creations, which is about a number of entities which are in very limited numbers around the multiverse and beyond the multiverse. And it's just basically asking them questions, getting some more information about themselves. I mean, I could make several lifetimes work job doing this, but also getting information about a bit more about us and our environment and how we interact with our environment out of them as well. So there's some more interesting things coming out, like for instance about quantum physics, and what we don't understand about quantum physics is that everything that is here is because we want it to be here. We expect it to be here, and therefore it is here. So anything that happens in experiments is based upon our expectation, even if we're nowhere near the experiment.
Right.
If we're like the other side of the world, or the other side of the galaxy, it doesn't matter, because everything we do is everything else. So once we start to realize that everything is everything else, and everything has the capability of being everything else, then we start to understand that, we're only focused here for a moment, and our focus can take us somewhere else, or it can allow us to compute things in a completely different way, or it can allow us to interact with different things in different ways. So that's one of the things that's come out of it. The book after that is called Beyond the Origin, which I'm not started yet, but I will be, and it's a bit more about the origin, that which is beyond God, which the Hindus call the absolute. And I don't know how long that book will be, but if it's anything like this current one, it'll be probably another 200 to 300 A4 sheets of paper, or sheets of ledger paper in the States,
Mm-hmm.
which should be interesting. But in parallel with that, there's a lady who runs the Big Picture website, ULA. She's been involved with me for some time doing the transcriptions of the World Satsanga meetings I've had since 2012. And we've decided to work on the first 10 years, because these things go in circles. So you tend to start putting the same information back out, or people start asking the same questions because they haven't been involved in the previous meetings. So you get to a certain level of information, and it becomes repeated. So we've got to the point where we know we're starting to repeat things. And as a result of that, we're going to turn the transcriptions of these satsangas into a book called The World Satsanga, the first 10 years. And the idea is that this will be effectively just questions and answers about all the things that even including the sort of things you're talking about now, brought in one sort of repository in one book. That's working in parallel. So
Awesome.
It's exciting. It's also hard work.
Yeah, I can tell, but I can also tell you're energized by it. And
the good thing is when you're enjoying doing something, you do it. You enjoy doing it, and you keep doing it. It's when you use a chore, you don't want to do it.
Right.
Editing is a chore, but sometimes when I'm editing a book, I start to read some sentences and paragraphs, and I think, wow, did I channel that? It's like that. I mean, when I've done a book, I don't read. When I've done it and edited it, I don't read it, because it's done. I'm on the next project. And then sometimes when someone asks me a question about something, I've got no idea what the answer is, because I don't know what they're talking about. I have to go back and read the book myself and say, okay. And I look at the question, look at the detail in there. I think, wow, this is interesting stuff. And sometimes I think this is really in-depth stuff. And sometimes I'm thinking, this is really difficult to understand.
Mm-hmm.
It's just amazing that that the information is there, and I'm constantly humbled by the detail and the data that's there and that comes out the channeling, because I just do it and forget about it. So
well, that's fascinating.
Not much though. There's not a lot of volume in there.
Yeah, well, thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for joining us today. It's really great to talk to you again, and let's stay in touch. I'd love to do it again at some point.
Yeah, thank you. Any time you feel the urge or the intuition, then it's great. And I apologise for the little interruption, but like I say,
no problem. We'll edit that right out.
Physical life sometimes gets in the way. I just hoped it had got in the way earlier, but never mind.
No problem. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Guy. We'll be back in touch soon. Have a great afternoon.
And thank you for Jackson for asking those questions, because they're really good questions, actually. There are things that, so-called adults, mature individuals miss. And it's the fresh mind which makes the quantum leaps in understanding because they question things from a completely different angle and from a different level of understanding as well. So it's important. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Guy. Wonderful to meet you.
That's a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Have a great afternoon. Bye.
Hey guys, as always, this episode is brought to you by Packed with Live Tea. You know, I always talk about how much I love iced tea, and Packed with Live tastes fantastic. And I don't add any sweetener or anything like that. Just great tasting iced tea, packed with organic adaptogens, including the 4 key mushrooms: lion's mane, chaga, cordyceps, and reishi. Of course, it tastes great as hot tea as well, if that's your thing. And some people like to add a little bit of honey. But either way, no matter how you like your tea, you're going to love this tea, and it will boost your immune system, brain, lungs, and gut. That's why it's packed with life. So get yours today at packedwithlife.com. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Ashley on Nothing But the Truth for a Better You and Me.